In this movie I'd like to talk about the resource browser, and depending on your operating system it will look something like this. On Windows it will have a slightly thicker blue label at the top perhaps, but essentially all of the controls on it will be the same as this. What you can do with the resource browser is to look at things like gradients, hatches, images or image fills, record formats, symbol folders, symbols and plug-in objects that have been saved in a library, textures for Renderworks, tiles, vector script palettes, worksheets, and so on. So this is where you can view what resources you have used in your current drawing, and you can also use it to bring resources from another drawing into this active drawing. And finally you can use it to access library files that you frequently want to bring resources from out of the Vectorworks libraries. What I'm going to do is to just make it a bit bigger here so we can get a better view of it. And just to demonstrate how you can use the resource browser, I'll just switch to a layer here that has a couple of 2D shapes drawn on it. This is just a polyline and this is a hardscape. So if I want to use one of these resources here, a gradient, and apply it to this object, I can either simply double click the resource like that, or I can take this and drag it over the object that I want to place it in. The same thing will apply to hatches. If I take this and drag a hatch over that, or I double click this, that hatch will be applied to the selected object. If you don't have a selected object and you double click to apply a resource here, then it will become the default resource. So if I double click this here, you'll see that this is currently set to a white fill. If I double click this, you'll see this changed now, and the hatch is now the default fill for objects. So if I now start to draw objects, they will have that hatch. If I then deselect that object and double click this one, this then becomes the default, and if I draw objects they will have that particular hatch. That's a fairly fine one. Now there's a couple of ways that you can view things in the resource browser. You can either use this what's called a thumbnail view, or you can view them in a list view. And when you have a very large number of resources sometimes and you're trying to find something rather than scrolling through these fairly lengthy thumbnails, it can be convenient to click on this little button here and go view as list, and you'll see this will change into a list view, and this way I can get each hatch appearing in full just on one line, and that makes it easier if you're searching for the particular name of something, perhaps a symbol. And when you do this, whichever ones, let me switch back to the previous view, go to thumbnails. Whichever ones of these are open, so if I have gradients and hatches, the disclosure arrows turned on for those two, when you switch to the list view, that's what you'll see. Here are the gradients and here are the hatches. But you can also add or remove items from this list view using the same menu. You'll see here show object types, and the object types have a little tick beside them. So if I was to choose gradients, it will turn off gradients, so now I'm just seeing the hatches. The resource browser allows you to, I'll switch back to thumbnails view. It allows you to look at the content of the active file and this is the active file here, ANZ Video Tutorials, and here we're seeing the content of the active file, but it also allows me to view the content of other files, either other files that I have currently open or what's known as favorite files. I have one other file open at the moment, this one here, and you'll see this is called Open Files. So this is telling me I have 3 files open at the moment. I can't see the other ones because they're behind the active file, but if I choose Other File here, I'm now looking at the contents of the other file. Now I might just switch to that other file and show you it. Here it is here. This is how you switch between drawings. Another file. And this file has just a few resources in it. I'll switch back to our video tutorials one. So what I can see now is, although I'm in ANZ Video Tutorials, I'm looking at the resources in another file, in other words this other file here. So if I want to bring a resource from another file into my file, then you need to get it so that you can see the other file you're bringing the resources from in this menu at the top, and have the file you're bringing the resources to as the active file. And once you've done that, then we could expose or disclose the part that we wanted here. And if this is the hatch that I want, I can either use the same method I was using before, which is to click and drag this onto one of these resources, or if I want to import it, I can right click on it and choose Import. Now if you see a resource and that option is not available to you, it means that you are not looking at another file. Let me explain what I mean by that. If I switch back to ANZ Video Tutorials and I right click on here, there's no import, because all of the things in this file are already in the file, they're already imported. So switching to another file, so if I want to import this, I can right click, choose Import, and once I've done that, if I switch back to my file, and you can always do that very quickly using this little Home button here, and if this is not grayed out, then it means that what you're viewing in the resource browser is not the active file. So once I click this button, you'll see it now becomes gray, and now I'm seeing the resources in my active file, and there is the hatch that we just imported. Now let me explain that again. So we have another file, we have ANZ Video Tutorials, and we have an Untitled 2. So we actually have 3 files open at the moment. The one with the tick is the active file, or the one at the front. But in the resource browser I can view any of my open files. So I'll switch back to another file, and this time I'm going to import a worksheet, and this is a plant list, and so this might be a plant list that I've set up in another drawing, and I've done all the customization to it and made it look just how I want it to look, and now I want to reuse it in this drawing. So again, you just right click on it, you choose Import, and if we switch to our file, or the active file, which is this one here, and remember the best way to do that is clicking this little button here, takes you back to your active file. We can now see that we have this in our file. So this is the way that you manage resources, and you'll see that in this lower menu here we have some other sub-menus, and these are folders. So let's actually look at those folders and explain what these are. Sometimes within one of these subcategories you can further organize things, and if we look down here to symbol folders, you'll see that we have hardscapes and seating. So within this category, symbol folders, we have a couple of other categories, and that's what we're seeing here, hardscapes and seating. So if I want to jump straight into this folder, I can either double click it here, and you'll see that this has now changed to hardscapes, or if I was on the top level, I could just go straight to hardscapes, and that will take me into this folder here. And one of the new features of Vectorworks 2011 is the ability to save hardscapes and reuse them much more easily. And this here is a hardscape that's been saved, and if I drag it over onto a hardscape, then that hardscape object will take on the attributes of this saved object. Hardscapes are a landmark only feature. So back up to the top level, you'll also see that we have one here called seating. And again, it's another symbol folder, and I can open that, and we've got a couple of chairs in there. And again, to use a symbol, I can either double click it, and that will make the symbol active, and you'll see down the bottom here it then tells you what the currently active symbol is, and it also will make the symbol insertion tool the active tool, and this means that I could then place one of these symbols in my drawing. Let's go back up to the top level, and that will display all of the content. Now another example here is a desk. This is not in a symbol folder, so if I were to double click that, I could just then put my cursor in the drawing, click once, insert it, rotate it if I want to, click again, and I have placed that in the drawing. This is a plant, and again for landmark users this is a landmark feature, but if I double click on a plant, then it will select to the plant tool, and depending on the plant mode that I have selected, let's say it's a poly-edge space mode, then I can draw plants using that particular function. You can also drag and drop these into your drawing, but dragging and dropping is a little bit less precise. You don't really get control over the rotation or the insertion point, and if I do it with a plant, it will just place a single instance of that plant, so it doesn't recognize the current mode that the place plant tool is in. Alright, so always remember this gives you an indication of the active symbol, and this allows you to navigate into subfolders. Now there's one other subfolder here called Saved Views, and if you do have any saved views, this is the Saved View menu here, and we have one saved view here, then you will find that under VectorScript palettes you'll have a folder called Saved Views, and all of those folders or saved views will be listed. So there are a couple of different categories of things where you can get subfolders listed under this top level here. But if you find that you're not seeing the resources in here that you think are here, for example we're just seeing that, and you're in thumbnail view and you're going, why can't I see all my resources? It's because you're not up at the top level, and you can just either choose the top level there or use this little button here to navigate up to the top level. Another thing you can do with the resource browser is to create resources as well as importing them from other files. And let's take a look at how you can do that. Again, we'll switch to this layer and bring down the resource browser. Just incidentally, on the Macintosh I can hide and show the resource browser by clicking this this button here. I can also do it just by simply double clicking up in the resource browser, so I can bring it up and bring it down. On Windows you can set it so that if you roll the mouse over the title bar, the resource browser will drop down, and you can control whether that's automatic or whether it just stays open by the little icon in the top right hand corner. It looks like a little pin. Alright, so let's take a look at how you can create a new resource, and we do that in this line here, clicking here, and you'll see that we can use this to find resources, but we can also use this to create a new resource. So if we want to create a new hatch, for example, we could choose hatch, and notice in here there's images and Renderworks textures, symbol folders, text styles, wall styles, and so on. So everything's in here, but in this case we want to create a hatch, so we'll choose hatch, and the hatch editor will open and allow us to create a hatch. And let me just make something that's identifiable here. So once we're done creating a new hatch, we click OK, and you'll see that this hatch will now appear in the resource browser. If that was a texture, for example, so we go new resource, and this time we went to Renderworks texture, then this time the texture editor will open and we can create a new texture, and so on. Now that's not the only way that you can create a new resource, because with some items like symbols, you can actually create them on the drawing. So if this item here, I wanted to create a symbol out of that, let me just expand the symbols plugin objects. If I wanted to create, turn this into a symbol, and I'll just duplicate it off to the side here, and I want to make this into a symbol, so I can go to modify, create symbol, and a new symbol, and we can just accept all of those, leave an instance in place, click OK, and here I get the option of placing it into one of the current symbol folders that I have. This allows you to further organize your symbols, or you can just place it up at the root level, which is where I will place it. Click OK, and now you can see that I've created it, and it automatically appeared in this section here under Symbols Plugin Objects. So that's how you can create a new symbol. If you want to delete any resource from the resource browser, you simply click on it and hit the delete key, and it will ask you if you want to replace it, and you can click yes, and it will be deleted. And the same thing applies to any other type of resource. If I wanted to delete these two hatches, I can select both of them. If I hold the shift key down and click down the bottom, it will select all of them. If I hold the command key down on a Mac or the control key on Windows, I'm able to pick random ones from the list, and again I just hit the delete key and it will ask if I want to delete those resources. So that's how you can create and delete resources from the resource browser. In this final part of the movie on the resource browser, I want to talk about favorite files. Now, favorite files are the way that Vectorworks allows you to access library content, either the libraries that ship with Vectorworks or custom libraries that you have created yourself. And what it means is that you can build up those library files and just bring resources from those library files into your active document on an as-needs basis, and do that very conveniently. So let's again open the resource browser, and favorite files are listed in this top drop-down menu here. And if I click here, we have the open files at the top. We've talked about those, and below here we have the favorites list, and these are all of the files that I currently have set up as favorite files. Now, to show you how a favorite file works, it's the same as we've been talking about before. Let's go to, say, this image fills brick, and when I choose that, I get a list of the resources in image fills brick, which is the file on my hard drive in the Vectorworks folder. And if I expand that, you'll see that I can simply take these and drag them onto an object in the drawing, or if I select this, I can double click and it's going to import them and use them in that particular object. So that effectively has imported them into my current document and applied them to the object as well. If I just want to import them, as previously mentioned, you can just right click and choose import on one or more of them. And of course, once I've imported them, if I go back to my active file by clicking this home button here, you'll see that in images now we've got those ones that we just applied to this object. They've been imported into this file and they are in the images section up here. So let's switch to a different kind now, maybe one that has furniture in it, and these are essentially symbols, and these symbols have textures and records attached to them. That's why there's some extra resources in this. But in this null furniture, let's have a look under symbol folders, and you'll see there are some subcategories in here. Let's look at seating. Double click that, and then we get a little preview of all of the resources in there. So these are hybrid symbols, 2D and 3D symbols. To use them, I can either double click, and as soon as I double click this, you'll see it will become the active symbol. So double click, and that chair has now become the active symbol. It's now under my cursor, and so I can click and place it in the drawing, and that process has imported that symbol instance into my library of this file, ANZ Video Tutorials. It's also placed an instance of it on the drawing. Once again, you can also right click on one or more resources and import them. So if I wanted to import this one, and I'll get the dialog here asking if I want to put it into one of my existing folders, and I could go, yes, actually I'd like to put this seat into the seating folder, or I want to create a new folder. I could do that as well, but we'll just go with one that we already have and click OK, and that has now imported it, but it hasn't placed it in the drawing. If we switch back to our active document using our little home button here, and we look at symbol folders under seating, you'll see that that's the one that we just imported then, and it's gone into the seating folder. The ones that I just placed directly on the drawing has just appeared out here in the root level. So how do you add a favorite file? Well, the way that you can do that is by going to the location of the library, and if it's a standard Vectorworks library you want to add, then the easiest way to do that is to choose Vectorworks libraries from this list here at the bottom, and that's going to jump you straight to the Vectorworks library file. Now, if you proceed at this point here, all you can do is to browse a document. So the process of just choosing that will now set this up as the location where you can import files from. So now if I go add new favorite files, then I can go in here and let's say it's some gradients that I want to add. I can pick one or more files to add, and this is important that you don't have to come and do this individually. So I could pick a random selection of files out of the whole list here and click open, and all of those files will be added as favorite files, and now they're in this list here. If you want to remove a favorite file, you make it active. So if I didn't want to have this one here, for example, I make that active. Then I can come in here and go remove current favorite, and that will remove that favorite file. You've also got the ability to open a favorite file. So if you choose a favorite file, and I now choose open current favorite, this will actually open that file itself if there was something I particularly wanted to do in it. Now you're also able to browse a document, because there might be something that you just want to get a file from just for a one-off. You don't actually want to add the file as a favorite file because you don't access it very regularly, and that's what this browse a document is here for. So if I choose browse a document and we come back here into libraries, and perhaps it's a hatch file, and I click open, you'll see this file will be listed right down the bottom in our list here, and that means that it's just temporarily open for while I need to get resources from it. And you can see it here now, and if I just needed that particular fresh marsh hatch, for example, I could import that, or I could apply it to an object in the drawing. And once I've done that, as soon as I switch out of it to my active document or to another favorite file, the browsing, that document is effectively closed. You'll see it's no longer now in the list down the bottom here. So it's just like temporarily open the file to grab something from it, but I don't really want to add it as a favorite file. Now the other place that you can have favorite files is in your user folder, particularly for your own custom libraries. And again, if you need to add those files, you can choose user libraries and just click cancel, and then go add new favorite files, and you'll now be in your user folder area, and you can choose defaults and access the various libraries that you might have saved here, or they could be in this root level. So just to reiterate, these two items here just allow you to quickly jump to the location of the libraries, and if you then want to add them as favorite files, it's a two-step process. Firstly, you choose that and you go, okay, this is where I want. You can actually choose one here, but it's the same as just browsing a document. So if I choose that one there, you'll see that will just appear down the bottom here as a browsing document, so I haven't really added it as a favorite. So if you do want to add it as a favorite, you then have to go to add new favorite files, and you can see the same list there. You're also able to remove all favorite files choosing this option, and if you have updated content from favorite files on your disk, you can also ask it to refresh. And finally, if you have a Vectorworks document open, for example, if I were to switch to another file document, you have the ability to add current to favorite. So that will add this currently active file as a favorite file. And once you add a favorite file and quit Vectorworks, go on a holiday and come back, those favorite files are still going to be in this list here. So they'll stay there until you remove them from the list.